Senate will come to order. Senators will be in their seats. The clerk will call the roll.
Alley, Baumgartner, Berger, Billinger, Boyan, Bowers, Denny, Dahl, Estes, Pasquido, Fitzgerald, Francisco, Givens, Goddard, Haley, Hardy, Hawk, Hensley, Hildebrand, Holland, Kelly, Kershaw, Longbine, Lynn, Masterson, McGinn, Olson, Peterson, Petty, Hilter Cook, Pyle, Rogers, Schmidt, Scooble, Sullentrop, Sykes, Taylor, Tyson, Wagle, Wilbur.
Senators and their guests, please rise and give prayerful attention to the chapel.
Please join us in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come again thanking you for the privilege of prayer. We come, Lord, asking that you would bless all of those in this house that are designed to project your will and your way into the decisions that are being made. The Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 24, verse 16, stated that he kept his conscience clear before you and before mankind. We need, Lord, to have clear consciences so we can be in tune with you as the decisions are made are to reflect your will and your way. And so, Lord, help each of us to be reflecting your will. Help us to love those that are unlovely. Help us to share peace and to be peacemakers. In the name of him who is the Prince of Peace. Amen. Amen.
Please continue standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On a point of personal privilege, the chair recognizes the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'd like to introduce some very special guests that we have today in our East Gallery. They are the bank leaders of Kansas. They've been selected by their peers to be in a special leadership group, and this is the second day they're here today. Today they're watching the legislature. They were here yesterday for our banking activities, and I know that they heard from a lot of guests. And Senator Rogers and I were on a panel that they got to hear about differences of opinion in the House and the Senate and between the two parties. So I'd like to welcome our block leaders, if they just stand up. Thank you very much for being here.
On a second point of personal privilege, the chair recognizes the senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'd like to bring the body's attention to the chairs over here. We're recognizing Jerry and Bung Lee Hill, the owners of Thrills Kettle Corn. They started this operation around 2012, just making kettle corn for county fairs and local events. And they've grown and are currently in 79 stores. They've won numerous awards, including first, second and third place at the Kansas State Fair. First for regular, second for caramel, and third for cinnamon kettle corn. They have won so many awards that they have led Burlingame to be named the kettle corn capital of Kansas. So I'd like to thank them, and you'll get to sample their product. And congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Hill.
Introduction of original motions and Senate resolutions. The clerk will read.
Senate Resolution 1767 by Senator Sykes, a resolution recognizing the month of February as American Heart Month.
Chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'll have the reader read.
Whereas cardiovascular diseases kill 1 in 3 women in the United States, yet 80% of cardiovascular diseases may be prevented. And whereas cardiovascular diseases and strokes kill 1 woman every 80 seconds in the United States. And whereas an estimated 44 million women in the United States are affected by cardiovascular diseases. And whereas 90% of women have 1 or more risk factors for developing a heart disease or a stroke. Whereas women are less likely to call 911 for themselves when experiencing symptoms of a heart attack than for someone else having a heart attack. And whereas only 36% of African American women and 34% of Hispanic women know that heart disease is a great health risk, compared to 65% of Caucasian women. And whereas the American Heart Association Go Red for Women movement motivates women to learn their family history and to meet their healthcare provider to determine the risk for cardiovascular diseases and strokes. And whereas women involved in the Go Red for Women movement live healthier lives, and whereas the Go for Red for Women movement encourages women to take control of their heart health by knowing and managing these 5 numbers. Number 1, total cholesterol. Number 2, HDL cholesterol. Number 3, blood pressure. Number 4, blood sugar. And number 5, body mass index. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the State of Kansas that we recognize the month of February as American Heart Month to raise awareness for the importance of the ongoing fight against heart diseases and stroke, and urge all citizens to show their support for women and the fight against heart disease by wearing the color red to commemorate this day. By increasing awareness, speaking out about heart disease, and empowering women to reduce their risk for cardiovascular diseases, we can save thousands of lives each year.
Chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I want to say thank you to everyone who did wear red today to bring awareness for heart disease, which is the #1 cause of death in women. And I also want to thank Aaron Lori and Abby Key, who are volunteers with the American Heart Association, and they are in the VIP section today. They spend much of their time advocating and educating their communities and women about the importance of healthy lifestyles, eating right, not smoking, in order to help prevent heart disease. So thank you. 80% of all heart disease and strokes could be prevented, and that's why the Go Red initiative is so important. So Go Red, get your numbers, which is your blood pressure, cholesterol, and glucose. Own your lifestyle, stop smoking, lose weight, eat healthy, and get active. Raise your voice, be an advocate for more women-related research and education. Educate your family by making healthy food choices for you and your family. And don't be silent. Tell every woman you know that heart disease is the #1 killer. And I just want to draw a little bit of attention to a new initiative that is expanding the Go Red initiative, and I always say it wrong. It's Little Hat, Big Hearts. And this month of February, all babies born in participating hospitals in Wichita and Kansas City knitters and crocheters across the country knit red hats, and they give them to all babies born in February and are educating about congenital heart disease for babies and also educating these young moms about heart disease. So I think that's a very great thing, which I am proud to knit for. And at this time, I will yield to the Senator from Sedgwick.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator McGinn.
Thank you. I just want to make a couple of comments. I first want to thank Senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes for bringing this initiative forward. But the little note that you have with your pen, the two top items, fewer women than men survive their first heart attack. And the second is the symptoms of a heart attack can be different in women versus men, and they're often misunderstood. So for those here and those listening online, I think it's important to know a lot of times men will go in and they'll have their regular routine checkup, get on a treadmill, doctor says, oh, something doesn't look quite right, I think got to go in and get checked. And next thing you know, many of them come out and they've had a stent. A woman cannot be diagnosed that way. You have to have a nuclear test, and you have to ask for it because they won't offer that to you. My family, we have a lot of heart history, and I think that's important for you all to know if that is in your family. And so that is something, that is one reason why I asked for that test, and to know if I'm on track. But there certainly are different kind of symptoms that women will have, and oftentimes we pass it on as, you know, I probably shouldn't have done that chore or that chore. And that's probably why my arms are just a little bit sore on my shoulders. So if you're listening here today or you're listening online and you think something's just not quite right, go see your doctor, and want to let you know that there are other tests out there for women that you can take that gives a little bit better indication as to whether or not you need to seek a specialist. So with that, Mr. Vice President, I yield back to the Senator from Johnson.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes.
I move an emergency be declared, the rules suspended, and Senate Resolution 1766 be adopted by voice vote.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Original motions and Senate resolutions, the clerk will read.
Senate Resolution 1768 by Senator Vasco, a resolution congratulating and commending Dr. Linda Faye Roan and the Wichita Teacher Inquiry Group for their work to acknowledge bullying in schools.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Vasco.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. If the reader would read, please.
Whereas bullying at school is larger than one child pushing, hitting, or kicking another, but there have been no national conversations about how direct and indirect forms of bullying at school are connected to ideological beliefs, structural practices, and cultural competence. Whereas Dr. Linda Faye Roan of Wichita, Kansas, who earned her master's degree in social foundations of education at California State University, Los Angeles, and a Doctor of Education degree in Curriculum and Instruction Cultural Foundations of Education at West Virginia University, is now leading a program to bring social justice learning to a group of students in Wichita to address bullying at schools. She has been supported by her mother, Irene Strong Roan, and her sister, Marva Joyce Roan, in her endeavors. And whereas the Wichita Teacher Inquiry Group was founded and established in 2009 as a university and public school partnership. Dr. Kimberly Burke-Halter assisted with this endeavor, designed to acknowledge that bullying can be systematic and perpetuated by school practices, administration, and faculty, and that culturally competent teachers teaching for social justice and using transformative teaching strategies can lessen bullying behavior at school and communicate more effectively with culturally diverse families. Whereas a new social justice grant project, the Wichita Scholars Inquiry Group, focuses on middle and high school students, particularly those who are growing up in single-family households, to help them create opportunities for students to act out of their own growing sense of agency and to learn from and reflect from their successes and struggles. And whereas the group will ultimately lead a community research colloquium to be held in the Wichita community to allow stakeholders to see that students and have been exposed to the most current research in their areas of interest. Student scholars will read their original research papers and will have the opportunity to discuss the research with the audience. And whereas the group is the only one of its kind in the Midwest and moves beyond multiculturalism to promote critical thinking, social change, equity, and social justice. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the State of Kansas that we congratulate and commend Dr. Linda Faye Roan and the Wichita Teacher Inquiry Group for their work to acknowledge that bullying is a serious behavioral issue, for raising awareness about cultural competencies as a way to lessen bullying behavior, and for equipping teachers with transformational teaching strategies to lessen bullying and promote social justice in classrooms across the state. And be it resolved that we support the Wichita Scholars Inquiry Group in its continued effort to promote critical thinking and social justice among students in Kansas.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Foskett.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And also I want to say it's an honor to wear red today in honor of the American Heart Association and awareness of this disease affecting men and women. Mr. Vice President, it is with great honor, a privilege, just a pleasure to recognize my classmate. I think we've known each other since 7th grade, Mr. Vice President. And I am thankful that they arrived here in the Senate chamber just in time as their resolution was being read. They drove in from Wichita, Kansas this morning, and they got lost. And so they made it here right on time. Thank you. Mr. Vice President, Dr. Linda Roan, I remember in the hallways of Allison Junior High School, she didn't hang out much with the other kids. I think even then, in 7th grade, Dr. Linda Roan, you were observing the other students, and it has brought you to your Wichita Teacher Inquiry Group, studying the reason why children bully other children. I am honored that you're here in the Senate chamber. I was a cheerleader there, and you were in all the honor classes, and so, but we are both here today as Senator and Dr. Linda Roan. If you would stand so that my colleagues could recognize you and your work with other teachers in Wichita, studying this issue for over, you say 2 years, I say it's maybe been 40 years or so. We won't give away our age, Doctor. But then her mother, who helped her, Mrs. Roan, if you would please stand, and Marvis Roan, if you would please stand, who helped with this, the valuable information we hear all the time, bullying in our schools. And so it is, again, my honor that you're here to be acknowledged for your esteemed work. And if my colleagues would please rise with a round of applause for this great inquiry of work and accomplishment by my friend. Again, Mr. Vice President, it's an honor to have a classmate be acknowledged for their wonderful work. Thank you, Dr. Linda Faye Roan. And with that, Mr. Vice President, I move that an emergency be declared, the rules suspended, and Senate Resolution 1768 be adopted by voice vote.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Doctor, thank you for the important work that you're doing, and welcome to the Kansas Senate.
Mr. Vice President,
Senator from Shawnee.
I rise on a point of personal privilege. When the Senate President introduced the individuals that are in the East Gallery, one of the people that I think needs a special introduction is her former Chief of Staff, Ryan Gilliland. Welcome back to the Senate, Ryan.
Thank you, Senator from Shawnee, for recognizing him. I still remember being called to the principal's office a time or two. Before recessing the caucus, are there announcements? Seeing none, the chair recognizes the majority leader from Johnson County, Senator Dane.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Upon recess, Republicans will caucus in our normal room, 548 South, upon recess.
Chair recognizes Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Also upon recess, the Democrats will caucus on the bills on general notice today in our regular room 287 North.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Dane.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the Senate recess to the sound of the gavel.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. The Senate is recessed.
All right, we'll be back in a little while. The Senate's going to go talk about things.
Senate Bill 410 by Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, an act concerning insurance. Senate Bill 411 by Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning driving privileges. Senate Bill 412 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning the Employment Security Law. Senate Bill 413 by Committee on Ethics, Elections, and Local Government, an act concerning elections. Senate Bill 414 by Committee on Ways and Means, an act concerning agriculture. Senate Bill 415 by Committee on Ways and Means, an act concerning the Kansas State Fair. Senate Bill 416 by Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning the deprivation of rights under color of law.
This constitutes introduction of Senate Bill 410 through Senate Bill 416. Please note reference of bills on pages 1 through 3 of the calendar. The chair recognizes the Majority Leader from Johnson County, Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of bills on the calendar under the heading of General Orders.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. The chair appoints the senator from Butler, Senator Masterson, to provide order to the Committee of the Whole.
All right, good afternoon. Having resolved ourselves in the Committee of the Whole, turn your attention to Senate Bill 180. For that, we'll turn to Senator Peterson for adoption of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we adopt the committee report.
For the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Senator Sedgwick, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 180 was brought to us last year by law enforcement trying to solve the solution of the hiring of a few bad actors in our law enforcement. What it does is it sets forth a procedure so that they can obtain more than just the employment dates from other agencies. It specifies what files they can take and make sure that those files are related to the conditions of employment, such as the officer's commendations or any investigations in it. Includes a bill. It does have some protections. It requires the agencies to get a waiver from the applicant from the new law enforcement agency to sign a waiver so that those records can be released, so the hiring agency can see those records. It also provides that an exemption from court where the records of the hiring agency, they don't have to turn them over. The records are still available from the agency that he worked for before, but just because someone has an applicant, they don't have to do that. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Questions? Seeing none, Senator, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee rise from the report Senate Bill 180 favorable for passage.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Turn your attention to Senate Bill 288. For this purpose, we'll recognize Senator from Cloud, Senator Bowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 288 would repeal a statute which prohibits service of process in civil suits on Saturday. In current law, this is a Class C misdemeanor offense subject to a $100 fine, imprisonment in the county jail up to 30 days or both. This law was passed in 1864 and probably made a great deal of sense at the time. However, it makes no sense to prohibit the service of civil court papers on Saturday, let alone be a crime to do so. It is interesting to know that court papers today can be served on Sundays, but not Saturday. The bill was introduced by the Senate Committee on Judiciary at the request of Johnson County Sheriff's Office, with the Kansas Association of Chief of Police, Sheriffs, and Peace Officers testifying in favor. There are no neutrals or opponents. There's no fiscal note or effect on the judicial branch according to the division of budget. Now I'm ready for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Committee questions? Seeing none, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When the committee rises and reports, it reports Senate Bill 288 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Turn to House Bill 2343. For the purposes of 2343, Chair recognizes Senator Shawnee, Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2343 is a bill that remained from last year. and it passed the House 119-0. This bill creates new law regarding non-discrimination and access to organ transplants for individuals with disabilities. The bill would prohibit a covered entity solely on the basis of an individual's disability from, number one, considering a qualified individual ineligible to receive an anatomical gift or organ transplant, denying medical and other services related to organ transplantation, refusing to refer the individual to a transplant center or a related specialist for the purpose of evaluation or receipt of an organ transplant, refusing to place a qualified individual on an organ transplant waiting list, or placing a qualified individual at a lower priority position on an organ transplant waiting list than the position where the individual would have been placed without the disability. And this bill had several proponents and no opponents. And with that, I'd stand for questions.
Questions for Senator Shawnee? Seeing none, Senator, you may close.
I move that when the committee rises to report House Bill 2343 favorable for passage.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Turn to Senate Bill 282. For those purposes, again, to Senator from Shawnee, Senator Schmidt, I do show a committee report.
That is correct. I move we adopt the committee report.
You heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Report's adopted. Senator from Shawnee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the annual bill that is proposed by the Kansas State Board of Pharmacy and the KBI, Kansas Bureau of Investigation. The Board of Pharmacy is required to submit to the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President of the Senate a report on substances proposed by the Board for scheduling, rescheduling, or deletion by the Legislature with respect to any of the schedules that are set forth in the Kansas Uniform Controlled Substances Act. In its determination, the Board shall consider the following factors: the actual or relative potential for abuse, the scientific evidence of its pharmacological effect if known, the state of current scientific knowledge regarding the substance, the history and current pattern of abuse, the scope, duration, and significance of abuse, the risks to the public health, and the potential of the substance to produce psychological or physiological dependence liability, and whether the substance is an immediate precursor of a substance already controlled under the Controlled Substances Act. The Board in this legislation has recommended some drugs to be added to Schedule 1, 2, and 3. The anabolic steroids being updated to Schedule 3 are to mirror the federal schedules. While issues regarding prescription opioid abuse and overdose will not be addressed by this piece of legislation, this legislation is critically important as it seeks to add several illicit and dangerous synthetic opioids to the list of controlled substances. When prescription drug users are unable to obtain pharmaceuticals upon which they have become dependent, they often turn to counterfeit prescription pills or illicit drugs such as heroin. Unfortunately, these illicit drugs can often contain fentanyl or fentanyl analogs, sometimes in deadly amounts. They pose significant risks to illicit drug users, law enforcement officers, and forensic scientists that come in contact with them. With that, I would stand for questions.
Questions for Senator Shawnee? Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a few questions for the Senator from Shawnee. Should I stand for them?
She will.
Thank you. In this bill, there's a number of lists of chemical designations, and in most cases, there's a number to the right of the name of the chemical. What does that number refer to?
Senator from Shawnee.
Just a minute. I had to ask for sure. Those are the DEA numbers, the numbers that the DEA assigns to those compounds.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And is that some signal to us that the DEA has made a ruling on that particular compound and that they have that number on the list?
Senator from Shawnee.
In some cases, it does mean they've permanently scheduled it, but but it does just mean that they've assigned an identification number to that compound, to that specific compound.
Senator Douglas.
So in the case of a couple of these chemical substances, there is no number assigned. And then on page 8 of the bill, lines 31 and 33, we're removing that number. Does that have any meaning?
Senator from Shawnee.
Okay, those numbers are now being used for a different substance because the DEA has, they were scheduled back in the 80s and now they've reassigned that number. I would not know why they did that, but I'm so thankful that the revisers are helping me answer these questions.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I received quite a few inquiries and comments regarding specifically, and these are substances I am not good at pronouncing, I'm sure, mitogyne, and it's been referred, I think, in the supplemental note as kratom. Is there, what evidence did the committee have that encouraged them to add this substance to the list?
Senator from Shawnee.
I can answer this one, Mr. Chairman, and I'm so honored to have the opportunity to answer this question. So, kratom is viewed as a legal alternative to opioid use, but there is no reliable evidence to support its use as a treatment for opioid abuse disorder. The active ingredients in them are the same as like morphine is to opium, THC is to marijuana. But probably most importantly, I have a whole litany of things I could go over, but most importantly, thank you to Senator Mary Pilcher Cook for directing me to this article. But on February 6th, just 2 days ago, there is a statement that the FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, an MD, issued on kratom and underscoring its potential for abuse. I'm going to read you just a little bit of just excerpts from this, and you're welcome to look at the whole article if you so desire. I thought about copying it for everyone, but it seemed like a lot of paper. And I'll be quoting from this article. Today, we're providing details of some of the important scientific tools, data, and research that have contributed to the FDA's concern about kratom's potential for abuse, addiction, and serious health consequences, including death. The new data provides even stronger evidence of kratom compound's opioid properties, and it goes through a whole litany of steps that they took to evaluate it. The data from the phase model, PHASE, which stands for things, shows us that kratom compounds are predicted to affect the body just like opioids. And it goes on to say, we feel confident in calling compounds in kratom opioids. It talks about the tragic reports they have received, including academic research, poison control data, medical examiner reports, social science research, and adverse event reporting. They now have 44 reported deaths in the United States associated with the use of kratom. There is talks about, well, then it goes on and talks about kratom and other opioids, other types of medication. And it says that, unlike kratom, FDA-approved drugs have undergone extensive review for safety and efficacy, and the agency continuously tracks safety data for emerging safety risks that were previously unknown. It talks about the serious risk of kratom, including respiratory depression, coma, and death associated with the combined use of opioid medications and benzodiazepines along with kratom. The agency also issued a warning that included significantly higher, that when taken with higher doses of loperamide, there was very significant issues, including severe heart problems that led to death. So the FDA issued this, and there's a huge diagram here that says that kratom This model shows that compounds in kratom strongly bind to the opioid receptors. So with that knowledge and with the recommendation of the KBI and the Board of Pharmacy, I think that the committee felt very comfortable in leaving that in this list. It is currently, kratom is currently a controlled substance in 16 countries. Interestingly enough, including the countries of origin, Thailand and Malaysia. It also was banned for use in Washington, D.C., Alabama, Arkansas, Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Tennessee, Vermont, and Wisconsin. And in 2016, legislation was considered by Kentucky, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Florida, and Connecticut.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I understand that the committee, when they were reviewing this addition, did not have the benefit of that report from the FDA. Is that the case?
Senator Shawnee.
No, Mr. Chairman, we did not have the FDA report because we did pass it out before February 6th. I'm pretty proud of that. I think we were just enlightened ahead of time of the FDA report, and we went off of what the KBI and the Board of Pharmacy recommended.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding again is kratom is a plant substance, not a chemical. Is that true?
Senator from Shawnee.
Hang on. I have that on these pieces of paper.
It's all right, you have the floor, and I'm not going to play the Jeopardy music, so.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Senator McGinn. It is I know it is a plant substance. I just was going to read you the technical thing of it, but yes, she is correct.
Very good. Senator Francisco.
And my understanding is that this is a dietary supplement that was used to support general health and vitality, promote energy, support joint and muscle comfort, support general well-being, a sense of calm. So only more recently has it been suggested that this might be a substance that would be used in replacement for opioid addiction. Is that also true?
Senator Shawnee, Senator Schmidt.
I would strongly disagree with that, but I would also say that the same symptoms or the same states that she mentioned, people also say about opioids. But this is an opioid receptor antagonist, and it produces opioid-like analgesic, euphoric, and sedating effects. But it is not, make no mistake, this is not a supplement.
Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can the senator from Shawnee explain to me why it cannot be considered a supplement? Why, if it's a plant material?
Senator from Shawnee, Senator Schmidt.
In 2014, the FDA abolished its inclusion in dietary supplements, so it was a decision by the FDA.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I very much appreciate that information, and I always like it when I get more information when I'm asking questions. So, Mr. Chair, I will say that in light of the number of comments that I've received and concerns, I did ask that an amendment be pre-prepared, and I turned that in.
Do you have the number? The amendment number?
3212.
Give us just a minute. It appears to be short. Do you want to read it or just want to explain it?
I think I can explain it. It would strike line 3 on page 3, and so it would strike the reference to the chemical substance in kratom.
Questions on the amendment? Senator from Shawnee, Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just beg the chamber not to adopt this amendment. This would allow kratom to be legal in Kansas, and I feel very confident after the last FDA advisory, or the FDA commissioner's report 2 days ago, that they will be scheduling this. It's only a matter of probably really short time now, and I would ask that the body not support this amendment at all.
Further questions on the amendment? Senator from Wyandotte, Senator Haley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't really going to weigh in on this discussion. It's probably no surprise to anyone who's been around this chamber for a minute that anytime we're listing additional, in fact, some current substances on our DEA list, I'm a little weary of the discussion. Many people know, and I again assert that I'm looking forward to us taking cannabis off this list, especially for medicinal purposes in Kansas, as many states have done. We're not going to have that discussion today, and for those who shared the information with me about kratom, which I'm not familiar with, I'm less familiar with kratom than I am with THC or cannabis and the medicinal values of the plant, but I did want to say that I will support this amendment. For those who approached me and asked me if I would carry it, I did not want to taint it, and that it's very widely known that Senator Haley is the staunchest advocate for medicinal marijuana to be legal in Kansas. And for those who don't appreciate the public health crisis that Kansas and many other states are under now, with opioid dependency and addiction. And the number, not only in our states, but in our country, who are finding themselves the victim of prescription chemicals that are killing. For those who don't understand that public health hazard, and that is a true public health hazard, at least in my opinion, Mr. Chair. Kratom is indeed, I've done a little research, it's a tree in the coffee family. And for those of us, I'm one of them, who suffers from another part of the coffee tree family addiction, as I do with the caffeine, perhaps adding another opportunity with this kratom, maybe a moment of pause. But it's not the opium poppy family. It is a plant. I think that there was a discussion earlier between Senator Shawnee and Senator Douglas as to what is its root origination. And as I feel, any plants, I'm not going to get biblical, but plants, I'll bring the verse some other time, Mr. Chair, but if it's a natural plant that is grown and cultivated, that origin, that source, God-given source, without the derivatives of chemicals, descriptions, in and of itself, I think we should move very cautiously to prohibit. It has been said, and I'm reading from some data that was sent me, that it does not appear to produce the highly addictive euphoria or lethal respiratory depressing effects of classical opioids, unquote. Finally, that kratom, quote, provides a far more favorable safety profile for consumers compared to more dangerously addictive and potentially deadly classical opioid medications. Mr. Chair, what that means to me is that this is a safer alternative to deadly medicines that are killing many Kansans when abused. What that means to me is that this is an alternative that is derived from a natural source, and that in and of itself, we have an opportunity to ease or to maybe even reverse what is indeed a public health crisis. The number one public health crisis that America and Kansas perhaps is facing. Those who get a hold of those prescription opioids and lead to not only dependency, but oftentimes overdose, misuse, and death. So that having been said, I'm glad that the Senator from Douglas has brought this amendment. Before we add more to the list, a growing list that in a growing number of opinions across the country perhaps needs to be reduced a bit, and whether we in Kansas agree on what should be on this list, more and more Americans are agreeing and having access to these alternatives. And soon it's going to catch up with us. I predict, hoping not the 50th, but we will one day have access to plant and medicinal and natural substances to counteract prescription chemicals. So I certainly wanted to say I do support it, and I hope that a number of us will too at this particular juncture. And I appreciate the Senator from Douglas and the Senator from Shawnee, her passion for chemicals and pharmaceuticals, and Senator from Douglas, both of them helping me to better understand, let's better understand it, and certainly will support this amendment. Thank you, Mr.
Further question or comment on the amendment? Would you like a response, Senator from Shawnee?
No, I would like to, yes, I would like to, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask a question of the Senator from Wyandotte, Senator Haley.
And since you've been standing continually, I guess I don't know where you're at in the order, so I'll recognize you. Please proceed with your question.
I thought I was supposed to stay standing, Mr.
You
Chairman.
are.
Okay, thank you. Should have brought my tennis shoes. So I would like to know from Senator Haley the citation on the article that he referred to, because there's a lot of information out there and most of it isn't very good.
Senator from Wyandotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was sent to me, and I've underlined it, from scientists who are with the American Kratom Association. So I guess that's americankratom.org. I guess that's AMERICANKRATOM.org. And they are relying on scientific data in conjunction with the White House opioid crisis team leader Kellyanne Conway and acting DEA Administrator Robert W. Patterson. And that is the report that goes.
Very good. Senator from Shawnee.
I do not believe that the White House put out anything like that to the American Kratom Society, but I thank him for answering the question because I think he makes my side of the argument. Thank you.
Further question. Senator from Johnson. Senator Patrick Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to the amendment, and I would like to make some comments on things that were said earlier. You know, there are chemicals in everything. There are chemicals in food. And all food are made up of chemicals. We are putting chemicals in our body all the time. We need to differentiate between good chemicals and bad chemicals. Opium comes from a natural plant. It's deadly. Mushrooms come from a natural plant. Certain types of mushrooms are deadly. So we need to keep that in perspective. I have been doing a significant amount of research on this subject over the past couple of weeks. And while it was true that at one time they thought that kratom might be a good solution for opioid abuse, they have done further research through the FDA. The FDA just released a study. And what they're able to do today is a scientific analysis that uses a computational model. And what they can find out in this model is what happens to these chemicals in the body. And the reason why they are now saying that this is an opioid type drug is because it has opioid properties. They adhere to the structures in the brain the same as opioids do. They know they have deaths. I believe there was 42 deaths. No, I think it's around in the 60s this year. But they have been able to find that these deaths are a result of the kratom. They are still doing more studies on it, but there is a definite link. So the other issue comes up when you mix this drug with other opioids or other chemicals. They can also be dangerous in the body, particularly with other prescription drugs. There is no evidence to indicate that kratom is safe or effective for any medical use. This FDA report came out February 6th. Highly recommend you go to the website, read the report. It's very informative and is built on scientific evidence. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions on the Francisco Amendment? Seeing none, you may close. You don't want to close on your amendment?
I have a question for the senator from Johnson.
On your amendment?
On my amendment.
We're on it. All right, we'll try this. Senator from Shawnee, Senator Schmidt. It's a question on...
For the senator from Johnson.
Oh, you're the... Will you stand for a question, Senator from Johnson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco, you may ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there any chemical substances that are in mushrooms that are on this list of controlled substances?
Senator from Johnson.
I do not know. That's not the issue under debate.
I think I would agree. I think we're getting off topic. We're on your amendment, so I have no further questions on your amendment. So if you'd like to close with some comments on that, you're welcome to close with comments, but we're going to close on the amendment. Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I only asked that because it was brought up. I certainly recognize that there are plants that have perhaps poisonous effects. I do know that it's very important that we understand how the different substances that we're putting in our bodies react with others. My understanding is that kratom is not an opioid, but it does act along the same pathways in the brain. It does not, however, activate the protein beta-arrestin, and that protein is what's responsible, or I understand is what's responsible for dependence, creating dependence. So I offer this amendment on behalf of constituents and other Kansans who have reached out, would like us to consider carefully this addition, and I would prefer that we do have an opportunity, and I'm glad there will be one in the House for further discussion of the DA findings. With that, I offer my amendment.
This is on the Francisco Amendment. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. No. Motion appears to fail. Motion fails. Back on the bill. Further questions? Senator Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one other question, and this is related to some of the work that has been done in the Senate Committee on Ag and Natural Resources with regard to industrial hemp. And my understanding is that per section 7606 of the Federal Agricultural Act of 2014, industrial hemp is defined to have 0.3% or less of THC. The language given in the Continuing Appropriations Act of 2017, Section 773, explicitly states that federal funds may not be used to prohibit the transportation, processing, sale, or use of industrial hemp that is grown or cultivated in accordance with Section 7606 of the Agricultural Act of 2014. Can the senator from Shawnee assure me that the placement of marijuana on this list does not interfere with any actions we might want to take regarding industrial hemp in this legislature?
Senator from Shawnee, Senator Schmidt.
I cannot.
Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that answer, and I will let the body know that if we do proceed on action with industrial hemp, we may want to come back and open up as part of that legislation the substances listed in this bill.
Further questions on the bill? Seeing none, Senator, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I close, I just wanted to draw the body's attention to page 6, line 4, the psilocybin, that is from mushrooms. So there is a scheduled 1 on there from a plant. With that, I think we've talked about this enough. I move that when the committee rise and report Senate Bill 282 favorable for passage.
As amended.
No, it wasn't amended.
We adopted the committee report.
Oh.
All right, unnecessary. All right, you heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We now have substitute for Senate Bill 285 for the purposes of carrying Senator Sedgwick, Senator McGinn, and we do show a committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move adoption of the committee.
You heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Report's adopted. Senator Sedgwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, what we have before us is an act concerning roads and highways, which establishes the joint legislative task force relating to the evaluation of the state highway fund and the state highway transportation system. And once they are done, that they will report back to the legislature. Mr. Chairman, I think it is important, since we are audio streamed, that the public knows who will be on this committee that will be traveling across the state to listen to the needs of the state about our infrastructure. Section 1 of the bill. There hereby establishes the Joint Transportation Task Force, and the task force shall consist of the following members. 2 members of the House of Representatives to be appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. 1 such member, at least 1 member shall be from the House Standing Committee on Appropriations, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives shall appoint either member to serve as a co-chairman of the task force. 1 member of the House of Representatives to be appointed by the minority leader of the House of Representatives. 2 members of the Senate to be appointed by the President of the Senate. Of such members, at least 1 member shall be from the Senate Standing Committee on Ways and Means, and the President of the Senate shall appoint either member to serve as co-chairperson of the task force. 1 member of the Senate to be appointed by the minority leader of the Senate. 2 county commissioners to be appointed by the Kansas Association of Counties. 2 city representatives to be appointed by the Kansas League of Municipalities. 2 members representing urban and rural economic development appointed by Economic Lifelines. 1 member appointed by the Kansas Contractors Association. 1 member appointed by the Heavy Constructors Association. 1 member appointed by the Kansas Aggregate Producers Association, Kansas Ready Mix Association. 1 member appointed by Greater Kansas City Building and Construction Trades Council. 1 member appointed by the AFL-CIO. one member appointed by the American Council of Engineering Companies of Kansas, one member appointed by the Kansas Public Transit Association, one member from a Class 1 railroad company appointed by Economic Lifelines, one member from a short line railroad company appointed by Economic Lifelines, one member appointed by the Kansas Motor Carriers Association, one member appointed by the Portland Cement Association, one member appointed by the Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Stores Association of Kansas, one member appointed by the Kansas Asphalt Pavement Association, one member appointed by the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers, one member appointed by the Kansas Association of Airports, one member at large appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, one member at large appointed by the President of the Senate, one member at large appointed by the Governor, and the following ex officio members who shall be non-voting members consist of the Secretary of Transportation or their designee, the Secretary of Commerce or their designee, the Secretary of Agriculture or their designee. Members shall be appointed to the task force not later than 45 days after the effective date of this act. Members of the task force must all be residents of Kansas and shall consist of members from all 4 congressional districts. The Joint Legislative Transportation Task Force may meet in open meeting at any time upon the call of either co-chairpersons of the task force. The task force shall meet at least 8 times, including 1 meeting in each of the 6 Kansas Department of Transportation's districts. The majority of the voting members of the Joint Legislative Transportation Task Force consist of a quorum. Any vacancy on the Joint Legislative Transportation Task Force shall be filled by appointment in the manner prescribed. Any member of the House of Representatives of the Senate who is appointed to the task force as a member of the House Standing Committee on Appropriations or Senate Ways and Means under Section A1, A3 may designate another member of the committee but has to be from that committee. The mission of the Joint Legislative Transportation Task Force shall be as follows. Evaluate the progress of the 2010 Transportation Works for Kansas program to date. Evaluate the current condition of the state transportation system, including roads and bridges. Evaluate current uses of state highway fund dollars, including fund transfers for other purposes outside of infrastructure improvements. Evaluate current transportation funding in Kansas to determine whether it is sufficient or not. Only maintain the transportation system in its current state, but also to ensure that it serves the future transportation needs of Kansas residents. Identify additional necessary transportation projects, especially projects with a direct effect on the economic health of the state of Kansas and residents. Make recommendations regarding the needs of the transportation system for the next 10 years and beyond. Make recommendations on the future structure of the state highway fund and how it relates to maintaining the state infrastructure system. They shall submit a report to the legislature concerning all the work of the task force by January 31st of 2019. Section 2 of the Act shall take effect after the publication of the statute book. Mr. Chairman, we had a lot of discussion in caucus, and I know that there will be a few changes perhaps proposed to this committee. We had plenty of notice for people to come forward and talk about this transportation plan. We had 2 days of hearings so that people could have that opportunity if they could not make it one day. We worked on that bill, and then we let that bill sit for a little bit and make some more adjustments before we had it voted out of committee. In the Senate Committee on Ways and Means, the proponents of the bill included representatives of the American Council of Engineering Companies, Economic Lifelines, Garden City, Greater Kansas City Building and Construction Trades, Heavy Contractors Association with Greater Kansas City, Kansas Aggregate Producers, Kansas Association of Counties, the Kansas City Chamber, Kansas Contractors, Kansas Motor Carriers Association, Kansas Public Transit Association, Kansas Society of Professional Engineers, the League of Municipalities, Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, Transportation Workers, otherwise known as SMART, the Union Pacific Railroad. Written-only testimony was also provided by Representative Mernon and Representative of Ash Grove Cemetery Company, City of Lenexa, Community Development, Manhattan, Emporia, Topeka, Lawrence Chamber of Commerce, Kansas AFL-CIO, Kansas Good Roads, and the Overland Park Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to talk just a little bit about the fiscal note. The estimates for the fiscal note include $43,900 for legislative pay and travel costs, $37,380 for travel costs for non-legislative members of the task force, and $4,851 for pay and travel costs of the committee assistant. The estimate assumes 8 meeting days. The Kansas Department of Transportation anticipates any additional expenditures from their staff will be minimal. Mr. Chairman, I also handed out, I hope everyone has it, one of the questions, I guess I didn't get one. One of the questions that came up in caucus had to do with safety, and we have some data from the Department of Transportation about safety. This is certainly something, the reason we have a 10-year plan has to do with making sure that we have the infrastructure that helps our citizens get across the state and helps our businesses get their inputs into Kansas as well as their products out of Kansas in an economical way so that they can compete with other states and globally across the world. Mr. Chairman, I think that those are the highlights, and unless I'm missing something, I am prepared to go on for any questions or amendments at this time.
Senator from Brown. Senator Pyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my questions have to do with the entities that are going to make up the task force, and as I read through it, 2 members of the House of Representatives appointed by the Speaker. Well, I know who the Speaker is. 1 member of the House of Representatives appointed by the Minority Leader. I know who the Minority Leader is in the House. And it appoints 2 appointments basically by the President of the Senate. I know who that is. 1 member of the Senate appointed by the minority of the Senate, the leader of the Senate. I know who that is. Then we get a little bit vague. 2 county commissioners appointed by the Kansas Association of Counties. No idea who that's going to be. In the interest of transparency for those listening in, Kansas Association of Counties, I'm not sure who even is going to be the appointing entity there. Can't name them. I don't know whether it means the exec director. I don't know. Administrator. Who? The old CSI song comes to my mind. Who are you? You know, who are you? Who are the people that are going to make these appointments to this task force? As you go on, the 2 city representatives appointed by the Kansas League of Municipalities. Again, who's appointing? Kansas League of Municipalities? Pretty broad, pretty vague. Doesn't identify the entity that's making the appointment. 2 members appointed by Economic Lifelines. And notice it says representing urban and rural economic development. And they're mentioned here a couple places, economic lifelines. If you drop down the page, and I'm using the explainer from caucus. Says one member from a Class 1 railroad company appointed by economic lifelines. One member from a short line railroad company appointed by economic lifelines. Again, I don't know the entity that's going to be appointing. I understand not knowing who they're going to appoint, but then we go back to one member appointed by the Kansas Contractors Association. Who on the Kansas Contractors Association, what member, what board member, whoever, who's going to make that appointment? One member appointed by the Heavy Constructors Association. Who is it? Who's the entity? Who's the person? One member appointed by the Kansas Aggregate Producers Association, Kansas Ready Mix Association. Again, the question: who are you? Who is it? I might just sidetrack here. I noticed that the arguments for the proponents that she listed, many of these groups are the ones that are proponents for the bill. One member appointed by the Greater Kansas City Building and Construction Trades Council. One member appointed by the AFL-CIO. One member appointed by the American Council of Engineering Companies of Kansas. One member appointed by the Kansas City Transit Association. And I have to ask, when we're looking at appointed by the cities or economic lifelines, the League of Municipalities, Kansas Association of Counties, we know the major part of dues for those entities where it comes from. It's not going to be a rural entity. I wouldn't expect it to be. But in the interest of transparency, who are these? Who's going to be making the appointment? Who's going to decide who that person is that sits on this task force? That's a very vague list with different entities. One member appointed by the Kansas Motor Carriers Association. One member appointed by the Portland Cement Association. One member appointed by the Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Store Association of Kansas. One member appointed by the Kansas Asphalt Pavement Association. One member appointed by the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers. One member appointed by the Kansas Association of Airports. Again, the transparency is lacking. I think that the people of Kansas deserve to know who's making the appointments to this task force, who the individual is going to make that final decision, who that person is. Maybe perhaps the dominoes are already lined up. Maybe they already know who these members are going to be. We're being kept in the dark. I think we need to know. I remember when redistricting took place, we couldn't get a map out here that was balanced for rural urban interests. And when we disclosed the makeup of the committee, we found out it was balanced heavily towards the urban interests. And I would suspect this is going to be balanced heavily towards the urban interests. And as a member of a rural Senate district with 7 counties, mostly very rural, I have an interest in knowing who these members are, and I want to know who's making the appointment. Again, I think the dominoes are lined up. But when it comes to the rural versus urban interest, task force makeup isn't clear. It's very vague. It jumps back to one member by the President of the Senate, by the Speaker, Secretary of Transportation, the non-voting members, Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Agriculture. We know who these people are. And I think we ought to come up with an entity. We ought to know who the people are that are going to make the appointments for these associations, for these entities that are listed. So, Mr. Chairman, I guess my question is, can the carrier of the bill tell me who the appointing person is for each of these entities? Specifically, too, also want to know who makes up economic lifelines. Can she give us some of their board members? Can we know who those entities are, who those people are? Are they different groups or are they individuals? This isn't transparent at all.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll do my best to address some of the concerns of the senator from Brown. For example, well, first off, I have no idea who these individuals will be because all we're doing is setting up a task force, broad spectrum, trying to figure out who's out there in the front lines that can best address how do we address infrastructure needs. These are people that do this day to day in their work. But for example, the 2 county commissioners will be appointed by the Kansas County Commission Association. My guess is that they do not know who those individuals are because this bill has not been enacted and made into law. I would guess that since they have a board of county, state board of county commissions, that they will probably seek interest from all counties to see if there's an interest. And those individuals who want to be on there will probably call the individuals who are on the county commission, state county commission board and say that I have an interest. And there'll be some kind of a process in which they'll go through where 2 county commissioners will surface. My guess is that the League of Municipalities would have a similar process that they would go through. If you're a business entity, they have an association, so I'm sure they have a board. Similar process. They will look and see who has interest level, who has the ability to spend time driving across the state and attending these meetings to listen to the individuals from all of those areas. So I don't think that they would just put somebody that perhaps cleans the office or somebody that mows the lawn for that organization on this. They will probably put somebody on there that has a vast knowledge base that they could add to this committee in that process and in that discussion. I believe there was a question about economic lifelines. They do have a website, and I'm sure they have a board, and I apologize that I cannot answer who is on that board. I would have to put the microphone down and go upstairs and get my computer and look that up. But I do want to share to the senator that economic lifelines, I recall even being back early on as a county commissioner in the late 90s, that was an organization that started way back then, and even probably before that particular 10-year plan. Those individuals were people who are interested in infrastructure all across our state, whether it be rail or road, air travel, and other things, and particularly also wanting to make sure we have safe interchanges as well as roads and highways that don't have congestion, so that we can get trucks travel and other things through our state. So that is my best first attempt to answer the Senator from Brown's question.
Senator from Brown, Senator Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to wonder when the carrier of the bill says some kind of process. I think that's pretty clear. This is some kind of process. We don't know how the process is going to work because we don't know, number one, whether these groups are going to put it to their elected membership. We don't know whether their executive director is going to make the decision or the board members are going to make the decision. We don't know whether this person's name is going to be pulled out of a hat. It is some kind of a process. It's very vague. It's not transparent. We don't know until they select those members. And I think the people of Kansas and citizenry deserve to know who's going to be put on this task force and who's putting those people on that task force. It's to me is very, very hidden here who's going to get those positions. And as to the fact that if we want a broad undertaking to take place, we have 40 senators in this chamber. Every one of us represents a Senate district. We have county commissioners, we have mayors, we have county commissions. It's just a suggestion, but it's logical to me. If I were to take the 7 counties in my district and have the 7 counties commissioners sit down and name the top 10 projects in Northeast Kansas or put them on a list, then take those top 10 projects and have research or KDOT tell me the cost of those projects. Do that in every Senate district across Kansas. Stop delegating our work to people that we don't know are going to make decisions for us, and put people on task force to make decisions for us, that do it in our districts respectively, and then come here and take those 400 top lists of projects across Kansas and delineate by cost, which is a priority in our Senate districts, and come up with a bill that says this is what we're going to fund. And these are the projects that we're going to direct KDOT to invest in over the years. Every one of us has a vetted interest that way. And the projects that are interested or of vetted interest to our district are then delineated so that we all are getting a piece of that pie. I think that's what my voters in my district would like. Instead, we're throwing it up in the air and saying, hey, whoever Economic Lifelines picks, whoever, whatever entity on you want to pick, chooses to be on the task force, they get to choose and line up their little dominoes, and they've probably already got them lined up. And Mr. Chairman, those are some of my real concerns with this bill, because I'm not so sure rural interests are looked after in this bill. And I am here, and I find it strange, there's many in here that sit on what is so-called rural caucus, representing a lot of urban areas. I think I hear more crowing about this and joining in the interest of our rural districts, because we want good roads in Kansas. Everybody in this body does. Everybody wants good rail, good air. We want it all. We want to make Kansas the best state in the nation to live. But I think there's a way that we can do this that's a better way than what we're throwing out here today. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll sit down. But thank you.
I think Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Peterson is up next. Would you like to respond, Senator Median?
I would.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Median.
Just a couple of things. When I think about county commissioners and League of Municipalities, I think about those individuals stand for election just like we do. And those folks back in those counties and those cities elect those people to represent them. They have a process that they go through that if they have an interest in this, that they can ask to be on this. You know, there's only 2 positions for each, and so not everyone can serve, but everyone can participate because they're open public meetings, and that's what they're designed to be. They're designed to hear from everybody in an open and public way so that people can understand what are the needs of the different parts of the state. And my only other comment back to the associations, we know what they do. I mean, they either do asphalt or they have petroleum marketing buildings and have to figure out the road system that goes in and out of there. And when I need a plumber, I don't hire a cosmetologist. We need people at the table that have experience in the type of work that we would do when we move forward with infrastructure.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did attend some of one of the hearings on that, one of the days of hearings. The message that I heard was mainly focused on that we need to plan for our future, we need to plan for transportation. I do like the fact that this is spread out among the districts. There's going to be at least one meeting in each of the KDOT's district. I do like that. However, with that, on the makeup of the bill, I do have an amendment. I have turned it in. It's FA 18, SB 285, S 3197, and I can explain it.
Very good. Give us a minute. Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this would simply do would add the Chief Executive Officer of the Kansas Turnpike or his designee to the non-voting members of the committee. I notice we have folks on there that need to know what's going on and see what the direction this task force is taking. You know, the senior guys and the aggregate guys. I think it's important to have our turnpike represented on there. Non-voting, they can still listen and hear and see, but be at the table. That I was questions on the amendment.
Questions on the amendment. Senator from Johnson, I sit here on the bill. Questions on the amendment. Senator from Sedgwick, Senator McGinn, do you wish to comment on the amendment?
Sorry, I have so much to read. I actually, Senator Peterson brought this to my attention today, and I was just a little bit surprised that they weren't at our meeting. It seems to me that it makes perfect sense that they have a seat at the table. So I will let the will of the committee make that decision.
Very good. Further questions on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator, you may close.
Move my amendment.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Amendment's adopted. Back on the bill. Senator from Johnson, Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like the amendment was just right before, these are the people I believe should have a seat at the table. I have a problem when you have people at the table that are going to benefit, yet they're going to direct to spend hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of taxpayer funded through gas tax and other methods, and yet they're going to be the ones to benefit. I'll tell you, I always like to tell a little bit of a story when I talk about an issue. And, as the people come by and talk to me about, this task force and how they're working on it, I've said repeatedly the reason why I think we need people at the table that don't have an interest is there's a town called Pleasant. I don't know how many of you are familiar with. I've watched it over my lifetime. 69 highway used to go through there. There was some deaths by the train crossing, etc. They moved the highway in 1989, bypassed Pleasanton. It was right on the edge. There was a lot of small business that grew up over by the highway. Well, just a few years ago, we moved that highway another 3/4 mile away, and most of them businesses by the highway that were before, they're not by the highway anymore, and they're gone. And you got a new convenience store that popped up. And this is because the people that should be at the table are not. The people of Pleasanton weren't there to make sure that road stayed close to the city. They've lost economic development. And we wonder why our state struggles in the rural area. Because every chance we get, we just keep moving the highway a little farther away. I got friends in Fort Scott, and I often tell them I don't know who or when they had the foresight to put that bypass right through town, 4-lane bypass. But the one thing it'll do, town might not grow a lot, but it's not going to die. This traffic's going right through town. Everybody stops and eats and gets gas. There's all kinds of convenience stores. It's a great little place to see the sights, but it goes right through town, and someone had foresight there. But when we're building these highways, we keep moving them away from our rural towns. I think the senator from Brown's right. I mean, we need people at the table that don't have interest in putting more concrete in or asphalt, and I don't fault them. They're small business people, but I think the people that should be on this task force are more engineers from ks.gov, more people from local communities, big and small, more county commissioners. They know what the struggles they're going to have for the next 20 or 30 years. These are the people that ought to be making the decisions, not the contractors. I mean, I watch these ballot initiatives in my area. When we lowered sales tax here, I think we had 3 or 4 of our largest cities in Johnson County have ballot initiatives and increase the sales tax right back up to take the money for roads. My city was one of them. It was the citizens of Olathe. And I wondered who made up the citizens of Olathe. Well, when I looked, I was kind of surprised that there's only one citizen put in a few $100s and several thousand by the contractors who are going to do the job and benefit. I think it's unfair to the people of Kansas. I think they will shape the policy instead of the towns and the communities. that need this, that need to be part of this. This is going to move roads. We're talking about hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that are going to move roads away from communities. It's going to impact every county in the state, even Johnson County, even the smallest, Sharon Springs or Wallace County. This is going to impact. Now, I don't want to see my county get any more it should. And I don't want to see the senator from Browns County get any less than his should either. I want good roads for all of Kansas. I want a plan that all the right players are sitting at the table and not the contractors that are going to be getting the jobs. Not, the CFL-CIO, I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong, AFL-CIO, I don't think they should be at the table. I think there should be more county commissioners. I think there should be more city council members. And I think there should be more people from KDOT and more elected officials that have the duty and the responsibility to pass a transportation plan to be involved in it. And I think we should take longer and do a better job than we've done in past years. I just don't want to see another town like Pleasanton happen. I bet you it's happening all across the state. I just see it because I go fishing a lot in that part of the country. And, it just saddens me because that town has so much potential. Yet, somehow we seem to move the highway away from the town, and it's just slowly dying. How many of them towns have we done that to? It's sad. It really is. So, I'm going to do something tonight, and I think what we need to do is send us back to committee. I think we need to pull out the people who are going to benefit from it and try to figure out how to include more local communities, large communities, county commissioners, city council, and people from the state. And they should be the ones picking where the highways go. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to re-refer this to Ways and Means.
That is a debatable motion. Anybody wish to speak to the motion? Senator from Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too have concerns about our small communities. But if you think about what has happened in the last number of decades, it has to do with people want to get from point A to point B faster. We have very good vehicles that are made today designed to go at a high speed. So some of those towns, a road was built around to be able to get from point A to point B a little bit quicker and not go through towns. But it was also a reason for safety. By going through town, there was more chances where you could perhaps hit somebody not paying attention, you're in a different community, those kinds of things. So I also want to share that, let me take you back a ways. So I don't know where to start here, but let me go back to what I shared earlier about the highway plan that we've had for 3 decades now. What we did is we took the road system out of the hands of politicians and put it into the hands of engineers. If you want to, the political thing I think about always is, my dad used to always say, oh yeah, somebody finally fixed the road down the way because they're up for re-election. And I can remember a road from Valley Center to, for those of you in my area, Twin Lakes Shopping Center. It was a big deal. 2-lane, rickety road, potholes constantly. Fixing potholes all the time. The road was never good and the road was never safe. Now what we have today, I have sometimes constituents that will call and say, hey, why are you paving Ridge Road again? Well, first off, I'm not, the county is. And secondly, they're not paving it again. They're putting a sealant on it. And if you think back, some of you are younger than me and maybe you don't remember, but I can remember, if you think back, we used to let our roads fall apart because water would get into the cracks and it would create a pothole. And then they had to come out and put the slurry on. And you know, the slurry isn't so great, especially in the wintertime. And then we would go on. And then we would wait until the road completely deteriorated. And then we would go and tear the road up and start all over again. Today, you do not see that across this state. I sure don't see it in my area. And it's because now it's called preservation. And when that road starts to deteriorate, now what do we see? We see them out there filling the cracks. And then later they come over and they put a sealant on that road. And to this day, Ridge Road is a highly traveled road in our area. I don't even remember the last time they tore that road up. Because we take care of it, and we take care of it because we have county engineers and KDOT engineers that say, hey, we found a new technology. We can make our roads last longer. And by the way, when they don't have a pothole and we're not out there having to fix them, it's a safety issue. Cars aren't going off the road, and our folks out there fixing them aren't getting hit by cars. So, Mr. Chairman, I respect having local government and state legislators at the table, and again, I'll go back to this is an open public process, and I hope every one of you, when it's in your area, you show up and you sign your name and you make comments. But this process has been good. Somebody pointed out we're number 2 on some, I don't know who they are, but sorry, but we're on somebody's poll that we're number 2. We're not number 2 because we got here started 2 years ago. We're number 2 because we started over 30 years ago with a plan that says, hey, let's figure out how to make our roads last longer. Let's figure out how to make these roads safe so we have fewer people, car accidents, and we don't have to spend as much money because we're tearing the road up and starting all over again. So, Mr. Chairman, I oppose this motion.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm going to go a little bit off topic here, but I would like to correct the previous speaker on Pleasanton. Pleasanton is thriving right now. They have a new community center, they have a new pharmacy, they have a new Casey's. I am glad that you come and fish in the area. I hope that everybody comes down, but the bypass has not harmed Pleasanton. So I just would like to say, I know there are small towns that may have been harmed, but Pleasanton's not one of them.
We are on the motion to re-refer, not on a particular bill. Comments on the motion to re-refer, Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Land.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to this motion. What I see on this list is a group of Kansans, and I think that's very, very important. I also want to say that not all Senate districts will be treated the same. My district has less than, I have 8.1 miles of US Highway 54 for Kellogg, and I have 12 miles of 235, and actually half of that is in Senator Solonchop's district, because that's our border, and I have about 4 miles of Highway 135. We will be shortchanged in our district based on this plan. We have no other state highways. I have no county roads or highways in my district. Am I upset because we're going to spend money on roads? No, because my constituents travel all over the state. And so I think it's important that we do this work, that we allow Kansans to come to the table from all of these different groups. Yes, there may be some that profit from it, but our Kansans will profit from it even more by having a decent transportation system. Thank you.
Senator from Sedgwick, I apologize for using your first name. I had back-to-back Lynn's. Senator Johnson, Senator Olson.
Just a response. My motion is to send this back to committee to remove, my opinion, more of the special interest and try to find people that I believe represent the voters more and the communities more. It is not to give so much to each Senate district or how, it's nothing like that. I will, if you bring this out of committee without the special interest, this is like the fox watching the hen house, in my mind. You basically are putting the contractors, they've got more votes than elected officials on this task force to direct the direction you're going to go. And I've been through Pleasanton a lot of my life, and I can probably get you 100 people to tell you it's not like it was 30 years ago. But let me tell you, this has nothing to do with about how we're going to spend the money. I believe that we need elected officials and the people that are accountable to the people on this task force, not contractors that are going to be benefiting from it. Not because they're getting paid for a daily wage, because they're going to get a contract out of it. You don't think they're going to use concrete? You don't think they're going to use asphalt? I mean, there's many people there. Why are they on there? I have to wonder. Maybe this is how we did it in the past, but we're in the new age of transparency. And I think that the people are holding us to a higher standard than we've ever been, and that's great. But I don't think they appreciate that we're putting a bunch of contractors on that are going to get the job. I don't think they appreciate that. I don't think that's the right direction that's going to drive the direction of the next transportation plan. So all I'm asking is, I support the transportation plan, supported the last one. And you know, all I'm asking is to send this back to committee so the committee can strip them people out, create a new task force that's much better than this, and then bring it back to the Senate, and I'll support it. I have no problem. I want good roads in this state. I want good bridges. I want the ones that need to be built. I want the roads that need to be built. You know, my dad grew up down by Erie. There was a stretch of highway that it's like 9 miles to Erie, 10 miles to Chanute, that corner. When you're going to Erie, they built that in 1955. Just a few years ago, they finally asphalted. It was concrete. Built all the way that 9 miles to Erie. And that's all I ever heard about as a kid growing up. How good a highway this is, it's built concrete. And they didn't need to redo it until just a few years ago. And we need to make sure our priorities are straight where we need to build the roads. We also need to make sure the cities are involved and the communities that are going to be impacted, or we're going to destroy it. I guarantee it. And there's many cities we've done it to. And, you know, I don't believe that we have had the vision of protecting the cities. Not protect them, that's the wrong word. To make sure that we're doing a good job for the rural communities of this state when we build that highway. So, I'm going to stand with my motion. And all my motion is to make sure that people, the foxes that are watching the hen house, are not benefiting from it. So the best way would probably be to maybe anybody that's on this task force, make sure they don't benefit by a contract. Maybe that's what we should do. That'd be transparent, right? Any contractor that is on this task force cannot get a contract with the state for the next 10 years. That would be a good transparent bill. I'd support that. So,
Further questions on the motion, debate on the motion, Senator from Leavenworth, Senator Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the Senator from Johnson contemplate, this will help me decide how to vote on his motion, would he contemplate that perhaps the special interests, as he calls them, could be non-voting members, because they do bring expertise and capability, and I understand the concern with the appearance of a conflict of interest, if not the actual conflict of interest that he's addressing. But perhaps if they were on as non-voting members, it would resolve that, at the same time allow the committee to have access to the expertise that they do bring.
Senator Johnson, Senator Olson.
you know, the senator from Leavenworth Slide, maybe I would support that, and I think that's a step in the right direction to me. I think there needs to be more members from the rural communities on there too, though. That's one thing I would like to see more. And cities and etc.
Further debate on the motion, Senator from Miami, Senator Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would the senator answer the question? Is he asking for it to go back to the Ways and Means Committee, or is he asking for it to go to the Transportation Committee?
Senator Johnson, Senator Olson.
Well, I was making my motion to send it back to Ways and Means. If someone else wants to send it to Transportation, that's where I've seen this come from in the past. I've never seen it start in Ways and Means, but I could be wrong. But I was willing to let the Ways and Means Committee try to put this group of people together. I think it's very appropriate what the senator from Leavenworth said, to make these people non-voting members.
The motion on the floor is to send back to Ways and Means. I would note that the president would have the authority to shift it from there if it went back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Johnson, Senator Scoobel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to oppose this motion for the following reasons. I thought that the state had a pretty stringent bidding system, and that we don't award contracts just because somebody's on a committee. And I think the projects that potentially would be put out for bid would also, if you want to talk about transparency, those bids are open in public, and so I oppose this motion.
Further debate, Senator from Shawnee, Senator Hensley.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to announce the first appointment to this task force, if I may be so bold as to do so. Since as Senate Minority Leader, I am allowed to appoint one member of the Senate, and I would appoint the senator from Wyandotte, Senator Petty, who is the ranking Democrat on the Transportation Committee, to this board. So I've adhered to the 45 days deadline in terms of the appointment process. I oppose this motion as well. You know, there have been several statements made by first the senator from Brown and then the senator from Johnson that we don't want this board to be making decisions for us. Well, they're not going to be making any decisions for us. They're going to be making recommendations for us. If you look at what the second to last and the last bullet point say on this explainer, make recommendations regarding the needs of the transportation system over the next 10 years and beyond, and make recommendations on the future structure of the state highway fund as it relates to maintaining the state infrastructure system. And then there are a lot of other bullet points that start with the word evaluate. They're going to be doing a lot of evaluation of the transportation system. So I believe the group that has been designated for this particular task force are some real heavy hitters when it comes to their knowledge and expertise of the transportation system. And we're looking at a broad-based transportation system because I know one of the amendments that the senator from Riley, Senator Hawk, had in committee was to make sure that the Kansas Association of Airports was put on this task force. There was another amendment to make sure that the Kansas Public Transit Association was put on this task force. The railroads will be represented on this task force. So it's a broad spectrum of transportation needs, not just highways, not just concrete, but a broad spectrum. And I think we ought to recognize that. And I would oppose this motion, and I would support the chairperson of the Ways and Means Committee on the bill that she's carrying.
Further debate. Do you have a comment, Senator from Johnson, on the debate? All right. For anybody who's gotten distracted, we're on the motion to send back, so a positive vote would send the bill back to Ways and Means. A negative vote would leave us on debate of the bill.
Can't we get a recorded vote?
The And it is just a majority vote of those voting like an amendment. It's not a constitutional majority that would be in the affirmative. Are you asking for a roll call vote on the roll call's been requested, requires 5 hands. I see 5. Roll call's in order. Clerk will call the roll.
Alley.
Yes.
Baumgartner.
Yes.
Berger.
No.
Billinger. Boyer. Bowers.
No.
Denny. Dahl. Estes. Vascado. Fitzgerald. Francisco.
Yeah.
Givens. Goddard. Haley. Hardy.
No.
Hawk.
No.
Hensley.
No.
Hildebrand.
No.
Holland.
No.
Kelly. Kirshen.
No.
Longbine.
No.
Lim. Masterson. McGinn. Olson.
Aye.
Peterson. Petty.
No.
Pilcher Cook. Pyle. Rogers.
No.
Schmidt.
No.
Scooble.
No.
Solontrop. Sykes. Taylor. Tyson. Wagle. Wilbur.
Senator from Lamb, could you repeat your vote? That was a yes, no. All right, clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Senator from Lamb, Senator Fitzgerald.
Pass aye.
Passed aye for Fitzgerald. Any, this is roll call. Any further changes of vote? Explanations of vote? Now we'll close the roll. Tally the vote. Nine in favor, 29 against. We're back on the bill. Further questions? Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Solontrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment.
You turned it in?
Yes, I did.
What's the number on that?
The bill 285-3215.
Give us just a minute. It appears short. Would you like it read or I'll explain it?
You can read it.
Clerk will read.
Madam President, I move to amend substitute for Senate Bill 285 on page 3 in line 35, after the comma by inserting the legislative in line 38, by striking after thereto, by striking all in line 39, in line 40, by striking all before the period.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too had some concerns about the bill at the votes and so forth, but I do feel like they will not be telling us what to do. We'll make that decision when this report comes to this body. We'll review it. We'll make those decisions. But in doing so, I don't know that we need to compensate parties that have significant interest in this process, in this program. So what this simply does, it will pay for the legislators that are assigned to this task force. It will not pay for the private party members. It will not pay for the city and counties. Those people will be reimbursed. I'm sure there will be many CEOs, many top company members, and I think compensated city and county members. So I don't know that the state needs to compensate them further to participate in this process. I do know the Senate President, I do know the Minority Leader, and he has announced his selection to the committee. I know the Speaker of the House, and I know the Minority Leader over the House. So I would ask that in their appointments that they do take a measured approach to this, pick as near as they can nonpartisan persons to help in this process. So with that, stand for questions.
Questions on the Solon amendment? Senator Sedgwick, do you wish to address the amendment? Terry, your bill. Does any other member wish to address the member, whoever needs for that? Seeing none, we'll pause for a second.
Thank you. I talked to the senator from Sedgwick about that, and I'm in agreement because basically, if you're a county commissioner or you're a league, they're going to pay for that through their department. If you're an association, they're going to pay for that either through their business or their association. The question we're trying to figure out right now in the budget report is there was $4,851 paid travel costs for one committee assistant, and I believe that is the individual that will be taking the notes and doing some of that work. And so just trying to figure out if that's included. You know, maybe it gets wiped out in this and we have to deal with it later in another part of the budget, but that's just what we're trying to just get an answer to.
Senator Sedgwick, is that something you'd like to have an answer to before you conclude on this amendment? Why, Senator Sedgwick?
I was just confirmed that it will not take that out. It just takes the part out for the travel costs for the other individuals, non-legislators on the task force.
Very good. Further questions? Senator Wynot, Senator Pettit.
Thank you. This question will be directed towards the senator from Sedgwick. Does this, particularly the second or the part of it concerning line 39, would this not allow state agencies that have members of this board to not be reimbursed?
Question from the newest member of the task force, Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Solomon.
Excuse me, that's correct. They would be persons that are compensated on their regular job, whether they're participating in this or not.
Senator from Wyandotte.
So, excuse me, but, by striking all in line 39 and in line 40 by striking all for the period, so they would be able to be reimbursed by their agency. This speaks to them as being reimbursed by their agency. Yours, does that leave it mute to that reimbursement?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Solomon.
This amendment is to pay for legislators that are assigned to this committee. I do believe any state personnel, other than those legislators, will continue to be paid their daily rate and or reimbursed for the expenses that they may incur while they serve on this committee.
Senator from Wyandotte.
Would it be possible to get verification of that from staff that's here on the floor?
Senator from Sedgwick, would you like to confer with staff? Senator again. I believe the question is, since it's silent, since an executive branch member or an agency member in course of their duty, would they or would they not be paid? Senator from Sedgwick.
Well, while he's traveling over there, I just want to share, most of those individuals are on a salary. They're just told when and where to show up for work, so they're under a different situation.
Okay. Senator from Wyandotte.
Thank you.
Further questions on the Solon Trump amendment? Senator from Sedgwick. Were you up first, Senator from Fanning? All right.
I yield to my
all right, if you're going to yield, Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Peterson.
I was a little confused on that last question and on the amendment. I'm looking on this lines 39 and all in 40 where it says that the employees of the state agency shall be reimbursed by such state agency. And were you intending to strike that?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Solon.
I do not believe that was struck. That's correct. It would be paid.
But the amendment says by striking all in line 30, excuse me, sorry, Mr. Chair. By striking all in line 39 and line 40 by striking all before the period. And I don't think this, I agree with the premise behind the amendment, but I don't think that striking line 39 that says members who are employed by a state agency shall be reimbursed by said state agency is part of the intended amendment. And that's why I'm asking that question, Mr. Chair.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Solon.
I believe in reviewing the information that I've just received here a bit ago. It was not the intention to strike any pay for any employee by a state agency. I do not know that they would assign anybody that was not paid to this task force. They would assign folks that are paid, are employees of these state agencies. This is going to be a task force that's going to be working in the course of business, and by their attendance is part of their job.
Senator Peterson, are you seeking a clarification of whether or not that is duplicative and they would still be reimbursed, whether it was proscriptive in the amendment?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
We have staff that can confirm that. Senator from Sedgwick, Senator McGinn. To repeat the question, I believe since that terminology is in the amendment that says "you shall" has been struck, I'm assuming they would be reimbursed through other language in the statute.
Now that we're only paying legislators, you do not have to exclude them.
Thank you. Back on the Solon Trump amendment, Senator from Fanning.
Thank you,
Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the most part, I really believe in this amendment. there's a part I have a problem with. If I was wanting to appoint someone, and perhaps I wanted to appoint someone who is in their 70s or somebody who's very experienced in road construction or bridge construction or somebody who offers a great deal of knowledge, but perhaps, you know, isn't well-to-do, a former agency worker or something of that nature. And I see a problem with, they may need to be paid in order to be able to serve on a committee like this. I think that we might be striking out a group of people who could give us a wealth of information from experience and can't afford to do it because they won't be compensated in any way. Other than that, I really think this amendment's okay. So I guess I would oppose the amendment because of that small detail that we're taking a block of people away, middle-class people who possibly couldn't get paid or seniors that couldn't be paid, and we might be handcuffing ourselves. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you look at all the people that are appointed to the task force, if they're not in local government or legislator or already on state somehow payroll, they're with an association or an organization. And so my guess is if they had somebody that was elderly and they wanted them to be on that committee, I'm sure that association would compensate them in some way.
Further questions on the Salt and Drop Amendment? Seeing none, Senator from Sedgwick, you may close on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recognizing that the Kansas Legislature is the 48th lowest legislature in the country in the area of compensation, but we all knew that before we took this job. And without setting a precedent of not compensating legislators during interims, I brought this amendment forward. But I do think there will be adequate number of people out there that will volunteer their time and they'll get paid. But I want to make certain the legislators that are appointed to this committee do get that compensation. So I ask for your support and I move my amendment.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Back on the bill. Further questions for the Senator from Sedgwick? Senator from Miami, Senator Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make this quick. I do have an amendment to offer, and it is 3213.
Very good. It's just a minute. Appears to be short. Would you like it read or would you just like to explain it?
I am more than happy to explain it. For those of you that are looking at Senate Bill 285, what my amendment does is it changes the last two words from statute book to Kansas register.
Questions on the amendment? Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Peterson.
I just want to rise in strong support of this amendment. I believe the sooner this task force starts looking at it, the better off we'll be for next year's budget time.
Further questions or comments? Senator from Sedgwick, Senator again.
I'm supportive of this amendment, and again, we don't know when we get to go home anyway.
Further questions? Senator from Miami, Senator Baumgartner, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move my amendment, which is 3213, to change the words Kansas statute to Kansas register.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Amendment's adopted. Back on the bill. Further questions? Seeing none, Senator from Sedgwick, you're expecting another amendment? I do not see anybody, so whoever it is too late. You may close.
I guess we'll fix it in committee, right? So, anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, and I appreciate the spirited debate. I think it's a great opportunity for us to get warmed up for many other important bills that we're going to have before us. Just like to talk just a little bit, and I'll try to be brief, but talk about 285. This is an opportunity for legislature to coordinate with industry and stakeholders across the state to set the vision for transportation by those that understand best the overall budget picture in Kansas. The committee is made up of legislative appointees by both the House and the Senate, and a requirement of at least one legislative appointees coming from both chambers sitting on budget committees. What's our goals? We've talked about that a little bit today. You can talk about the 3 E's. To evaluate, explore, and envision. To evaluate the process of T-Works, the current system condition. To explore the current structure of the State Highway Fund and the State General Fund. To envision the future projects that Kansas will need to best serve the communities and travelers in and through our state. This bill requires a report to come back to our legislature, to our next governor, so that they can make decisions on our next, in the next 5 years or 10 years to come with our infrastructure. This bill requires members to come from all different regions of the state, and it requires 8 meetings that occur in at least one of the 6 KDOT districts. Why are we doing this? With 23 projects across the state indefinitely suspended and needs continuing to merge across the state, it is necessary to reevaluate the overall transportation needs. Whether federal aid remains at the current level or is increased with federal infrastructure funding, under today's condition, there exists a high likelihood that there will be not enough money in the State Highway Fund to provide and require matching amounts to fully spend all those federal dollars in Kansas. Surrounding states have undertaken similar measures. Local units of government are struggling to address the emergent needs due to KDOT not being able to financially assist them at the levels that had been made available previously. So, with those comments, Mr. Chairman, I move.
Substitute 285 as amended.
I move when the committee rises to report, it reports substitutes for Senate Bill 285 as amended favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. That wasn't very energetic, but the motion passes. That concludes our business. The chair recognizes the Majority Leader from Johnson, Senator Denny.
I move the committee rise and report.
You heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
On motion of Senator Denny, the Senate resolved itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of bills on the calendar under the heading of General Orders with Senator Masterson as the chair. Recommended, Senate Bill 180 be amended by the adoption of the committee amendments and the bill be passed as amended. Senate Bill 288 be passed. House Bill 2343 be passed. Senate Bill 282 be amended by the adoption of the committee amendments and the bill be passed as amended. Substitute for Senate Bill 285 be amended by the adoption of the committee amendments, recommending a substitute bill be further amended on motion of Senator Peterson, Senator Solentrop, and Senator Baumgartner, and the bill be passed as further amended.
The chair recognizes the senator from Butler, Senator Masterson, to adopt the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. The chair recognizes the Majority Leader from Johnson County, Senator Denny.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move an emergency be declared, the rules suspended, and the following bills be advanced to final action and roll call. Senate Bill 180, Senate Bill 288, House Bill 2343, Senate Bill 282, and substitute for Senate Bill 285.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are now ready for final action. On this roll call, we will take the following. The bills on page 5, Senate Bill 180, Senate Bill 288, House Bill 2343, Senate Bill 282, and substitute for Senate Bill 285. The clerk will call the roll.
Senate Bill 180, an act concerning law enforcement. Senate Bill 288, an act repealing KSA 69102. House Bill 2343, an act concerning health and healthcare. Senate Bill 282, an act concerning the Uniform Controlled Substance Act. Substitute for Senate Bill 285, an act concerning roads and highways.
The clerk will call the roll.
Alley. Baumgartner. Berger. Billinger. Boyan. Bowers. Denny. Dahl. Estes. Falscadot. Fitzgerald. Francisco.
Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I vote pass on Senate Bill 282 and aye on the remainder, and I'd like to explain my vote.
Please proceed.
Mr. Vice President, I vote pass on Senate Bill 282. I appreciate the work of the Senate Committee on Public Health and Welfare and those agencies who testified in support of the bill. However, I cannot vote yea after the amendment that was offered to remove marginalizing from the list failed. I certainly recognize their legitimate concerns. However, I've been hearing from individuals who are reporting positive benefits from the use of kratom, the plant substance that includes this other substance. Most importantly, there is interest in using kratom to help individuals who are seeking relief from opioid addiction. If this substance is added to the list of controlled substances, we have taken away the opportunity for further research on this substance. We need that research as we search for solutions for the health of individuals and our communities. Mr. Vice President, I will let you know that after 4 o'clock, while we were, and I had sat down, I received one more comment from a constituent whose son is a physician in the emergency room in Salina, and it is his concern that research be continued. Thank you.
Senator from Douglas, would you like your remarks right in there?
The first part of them, yes.
So ordered.
Givens.
Aye.
Goddard. Haley.
Senator from Wyandotte, Senator Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I vote aye on everything except the Senate Bill 282. And with her permission, I'd like to join the first part of the remarks of the gentlelady from Douglas on her explanation. So I think it's up to the words communities, correct? Up to that point.
Senator from Wyandotte, would you give us your vote on Senate Bill 282?
Yes, a pass.
Thank you.
Aye on the balance.
Harding.
Aye.
Hawk.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Hildebrand.
Aye.
Holland.
Aye.
Kelly. Kirshen. Longvine. Lynn. Masterson. McGinn. Olson. Peterson. Petty. Pilcher Cook. Pyle.
Bill 285,
Scoogle. Solendrop. Sykes. Taylor. Tyson. Wiggle. Tyson.
Senator from Lane, can you repeat your vote, please?
Wiggle. Wilborn.
Has every senator had an opportunity to vote? Does any senator wish to change their vote?
Yes. I want to change aye to no on 285. Thank you.
Senator from Cherokee, Senator Hildebrand.
I'd like to change my aye to no on 285, please.
Any additional changes of vote? Does any senator wish to explain their vote? Seeing none, the clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Voting in favor and 0 against for Senate Bill 180, Senate Bill 288, House Bill 243. 35 voting in favor and 1 opposed to Senate Bill 282, and 34 voting in favor and 4 opposed to Senate Bill 285. These measures, having received the required constitutional majority, are hereby declared passed. Correction and approval of adjournment. Messages from the House, the clerk will read.
Announcing passage of Senate Bill 262.
We have a correction on substitute for Senate Bill 285. The vote count was 33 to 5. And Senate Bill 282 was 36 voting in favor and 0 against. Messages from the House, the clerk will read.
Madam President, the Committee on Ways and Means recommends Senate Bill 343 be passed. Senator McGinn, Chairperson. Madam President, the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources recommends Senate Bill 194 be amended and the bill be passed as amended. Senator Kirshen, Chairperson. Madam President, the Committee on Judiciary recommends House Bill 2439 as amended by the Committee on the Whole be passed. Senator Wilborn, Chairperson.
This constitutes introduction of those bills previously read. Are there announcements? Senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. For those wearing red, the American Heart Association would like to get a picture at the sound of the gavel.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator, hanging out your resources. A little meet tomorrow morning, 8:30. Got 3 bills we need to finish up on, so I appreciate you being here.
Additional announcements. Seeing none, the chair recognizes the majority leader from Johnson County, Senator Denny.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the Senate adjourn until 8 a.m. on Friday, February 9th, 2018.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. The Senate is adjourned.
Join us back